Just a quick thank you to everyone who's been using my EA creator code. It really means a lot. If you're picking up new Sims 4 packs, just enter SimmerySims as the promo code at checkout in the EA app or on the Sims website and click apply. It won't give you a discount, but it is a totally free way to support me and my channel. Thank you again, and happy simming! What's up everyone, my name is Marie, welcome to my channel, and welcome to another speed build. So for today's video, I'm back with another base game only build, which this is going to be for my base game save file that I have been working on for a very long time, but I'm really trying to put in more of like a consistent effort these days to really work on it consistently and see if I can at some point have it finished. You know, that would be the ultimate dream. I've talked about this before in previous speed builds as well, in previous voiceovers, where I was kind of like out loud just trying to figure out a way if I could find a way to like make this a more consistent thing, maybe do a base game only month or like a base game build every week or something like that. But you know, I haven't really made up my mind about that yet. But it was really surprising to see how many of you said that you would totally be interested in like a base game only month or whatever with just base game speed builds for the save file. So that's actually really good to know. Thank you so much for your feedback on that. I haven't really decided yet what I want to do. Also because I've just had a couple of very busy weeks just now and like a couple of very busy weekends. So I really haven't had time to do a lot of building or a lot of thinking about videos or, you know, future schedules or whatnot. So we'll have to see what ends up happening with that. But for today, I am doing another base game build and I'm tackling this lot that I have sort of been dreading to do. It is the Parkshore lot in Windenburg. No, it's not Windenburg. Willow Creek is the name of the world. Windenburg is obviously the new world, or not the new world, but the world that came with Get Together. So yeah, this is in Willow Creek and it is the Parkshore lot, which I believe, from the top of my head, is it a 30 by 40 or a 40 by 50? I'm not exactly sure. It's a bigger lot and it is right next to the Goth's house. As you can see, don't pay a lot of attention to that. I actually replaced the base game Goth house with one that I did, except mine was not only base game. So I have to go through and sort of redo it and replace things that kind of got deleted because they were pack items. So I have to sort of go through and renovate my version of the Goth's house and like base gamify it, if that makes sense. So that's why the house next door looks super sad and has no windows. But yeah, this is on the lot right next to it. And by default, there is a really strange looking sort of like villa built on this lot, which I do like the vibes of it, but I've always dreaded either renovating that or building something different on this lot. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but for some reason this lot is just intimidating to me. It's probably because it's one of the bigger ones, and those I just sort of tend to avoid in general, you know? If you've watched my videos before, you'll know that. But yeah, I sort of tend to, you know, avoid those larger lots. But this time I actually felt super inspired because we are building this house for a townie in particular that we all know. I was gonna say know and love, but we all know her. It's Eliza Pancakes, except she now goes by her maiden name Eliza Hastings because in my base game save file, her and Bob actually did finally get that divorce. I also did make them adults, and in the timeline, like in my personal, like in my save file for my timeline, what I was thinking of, I actually made Bob and Eliza adults, and they have a teenage son, Iggy. And Iggy is actually like the original storyline for them. Like it's a toddler. I think their son that got added later on by Maxis at some point, I think. And he's on the gallery, I think, and you can download him or like download an updated version of the pancakes with their toddler Iggy. But I actually, you know, progressed time a little bit for this family in particular, and they now have a teenage son, Iggy, and Bob and Eliza actually got divorced. I built a little house for Bob and Iggy a long time ago for this save file already. They also live in Willow Creek, but in a really small, like 2-bedroom, I want to say starter kind of home. It's more expensive than a starter home. Like there's a little bit more to it, but it's a very simple little 2-bedroom house. And Iggy lives with his dad full time. And Eliza actually does have a new partner. So she is now with, oh my goodness, I'm completely forgetting her name. I think we called her Alexa something. She has two first names, so I'm not exactly remembering what exactly we named her, which is horrible. But she now lives with her new partner. They're not married or engaged, I don't think. I know for a fact that I didn't have them get married. I may have put them as engaged, but I think I just put them as partners. So they're partners in any case, they're dating, and they live together in this house, which this is Alexa's house, and she comes from money. So, you know, that is a great thing for Eliza because she has the mansion baron aspiration. And we made a lot of her dreams come true by building her this particular house. It has a bunch of columns. I do believe that one of the aspiration, like, little goals is that she has to own a specific amount of columns, like, on a house, and we definitely tick that off. So, you know, and like a house worth a specific amount of money. So yeah, we are definitely kind of making her dreams come true with this house. Now, is that the only reason she's with Alexa? I don't think so. You know, she's in it for love as well because they also have a daughter. Her name is Rose. They had a science baby together and her name is Rose. She's a toddler and she also lives here. So I actually decorated this house for 3 Sims total. Eliza and her new partner Alexa, and then their toddler, their daughter Rose. So she lives here too. And I was definitely thinking that Eliza moved in with Alexa because this is Alexa's house. I think she, in my storyline, in my brain, she actually inherited this house. So probably from her grandparents and what, or something like that. I think she definitely comes from a very wealthy family regardless. So, you know, maybe her parents actually inherited this house and then passed it on to Alexa. That's definitely an option, but she lives in this house. She also does make a lot of money because she is like a very successful author at this point. I think she's a level 6 or level 7 author in the like writer career. So she's doing very well for herself. I imagine her being a successful author. She has written a couple of bestsellers, or maybe more than a couple, you know, so she's really good at what she does. So she makes money that way, and, you know, she's a fancy lady. She likes her large house. She likes her fancy clothes. She likes, like, you know, writing books and whatnot. She's very artistic in that sense. She has a lot of artistic hobbies. She likes to paint. I also added a little bonsai tree kind of hobby. I really saw that for her as well. I thought that would be kind of cool. So she's very artistic in that sense. She has a lot of hobbies and she's a very successful writer. And then Eliza, she's actually, I think, level 7 in the business career at this point. So she's doing really well for herself. I feel like Eliza has always been like very motivated when it comes to making money. So whether or not she really enjoys her career, I would not be so sure of it, but she does like making money. So she's definitely in it for the money. The business career makes quite a bit of money as well. So she's doing really well for herself in that regard. So I feel like, I think Eliza is in a good place. I think she's okay after the divorce from Bob. I'm not exactly sure how that happened. I'm not sure if Eliza maybe was already sort of with Alexa, or maybe they had already met and that's when Eliza realized, you know, I really need to get a divorce from Bob because this is just confirming that I don't really have the right feelings for him anymore. Or I'm not exactly sure what happened. Maybe Bob initiated the divorce, but I don't think so. In my brain, it was probably Eliza. I don't know, let me know what you think, but that's sort of how it goes down, or how it went down in my storyline. And now I do think that Eliza and Iggy actually have a pretty all right relationship. There's no bedroom specifically for Iggy in this house because I don't think that Iggy really likes Alexa all that much, and that's probably because I feel like Bob, I have to set up these relationships properly in my save file still, but I feel like Bob maybe really dislikes Alexa, and since Iggy lives with him, maybe, you know, Bob is sort of like, you know, sort of like transferring over his feelings for Alexa, like to his son Iggy. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, but I feel like Bob just really doesn't like Alexa that much. But obviously Iggy does love his sister, his little sister Rose, the toddler that lives here in this house with her moms. So I feel like they have a pretty good relationship, and that's why Iggy comes over from time to time to obviously see his mom, but also hang out with his baby sister. I could see that being like a wholesome little thing. And then maybe at some point Iggy will start to warm up to Alexa as well, and he'll see for himself that she's really not all that bad, because I feel like she's a nice lady. I don't know, I feel like in my brain she's kind of a nice lady, but I do feel like she is, she comes from a wealthy family. She is used to being around more wealthy people, and you know, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe she doesn't really like Bob either because, you know, she is her girlfriend's ex-husband. So I don't know, maybe there's like a little bit of something like awkwardness there, and she really doesn't like him all that much either. So, you know, it's a little bit difficult in that regard between the households or between the families. But it's a little complicated, but it's kind of fun as well to kind of sort of think of these things, I guess. But yeah, you can kind of see the house come together. I was trying to make it really fancy. It's sort of a mix of a colonial house, but also like a New Orleans inspired kind of thing. It has a literal wraparound porch that pretty much goes around the entire house, with the exception of that little bump out front with a couple of diagonal walls, like a sort of like a makeshift bay window, if you will. So that's what I put in front. But then for the rest, we have a literal wraparound porch, which I think is so cool. And that definitely feels a little bit like New Orleans inspired. I also put up a lot of hanging plants all around the porch as well. So that really helps with those New Orleans vibes, I guess. But then the house shape itself, I feel like leans a little bit more colonial. I don't know. I was looking at a couple of different inspiration pictures for this one when I first got started with the house, and I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I just kind of my own creativity sort of took over, and it's a mix between different styles of houses. But regardless, I really like how this came out. And needless to say, obviously it is just base game, so we're not using any packs. And I'm really warming up to doing especially exteriors with just the base game. Interiors is usually where I tend to struggle a little bit because, you know, we really only have a limited amount of items to choose from, a limited amount of styles to kind of pick and choose and mix and match. And that's usually where I tend to struggle a little bit, with the exception of kitchens these days, because we have those really nice, beautiful new base game counters that were added onto the game a couple of months ago. And I really like those. Those were, I'm not even sure if I used them in this house in particular. I think I used older base game counters for this one. I could be wrong though. But, you know, ever since we got those, I don't really struggle with base game kitchens anymore. I tend to use those even if I'm not doing base game only builds. So that's great. And then I really like landscaping with just the base game for some reason. I don't know why, but I really love the base game debug plants and also the non-debug plants, like the actual ones from the catalog. But I don't struggle with exteriors that much. I do struggle with interiors though. You'll see that once we move on to the interior, because this house is pretty big as well. So I had a couple of rooms, you know, I had definitely had some rooms to furnish here. So that was quite a bit of work to do, but I do think they turned out really cute. Whenever I am building base game homes, I'll usually make them not too cluttered anyway, because we don't have that many items to pick from. I don't want it to look too repetitive. And whenever I'm building base game homes, I'm really like extra trying to like think of gameplay, like keep gameplay in mind and have it not be too overwhelming, have it maybe run sort of smoothly. But of course, when it comes to landscaping, I always go overboard just a little bit. I like to have my very lush like patches of flowers and plants and bushes, and that's just kind of what I like to do, especially with these older types of houses, these older fancy types of houses. I like to have the landscaping look very intentional and sort of neat, but also just sort of lush and have like a bunch of flowers and different types of plants. They probably have someone come over and take care of the garden. They probably don't do that themselves. Even though I could see Eliza, actually I take that back. I feel like maybe Eliza really enjoys gardening. Maybe, I'm not sure if that was always her hobby already, but I could totally see that be her hobby as well. I placed a bunch of planter pots on the porch as well, like on one side of the porch. So we have a really nice gardening area over there, and maybe she really enjoys to do gardening in her free time. I could totally see that for her actually. So maybe she likes to do that. But then here, as you can see, we have moved on to the interior for this house. And I really do like how it came together, even though it's just base game and I was kind of struggling. But considering that it was just base game, I really do enjoy how this came together. So first off, we have this sort of fancy hallway where we have a double staircase moment, and then the staircase is also open Like it's sort of like a balcony staircase. You'll see that once we move on to the upstairs. So it's kind of fancy like that. I always really like whenever I have a chance to do something fancy with the staircases going up. I don't know, it's just fun to do. So that's kind of what I did for this one. It was very fitting for the style of house, so obviously I had to do it. And then here in the living room, I tried to go very matchy-matchy. And I will say for the longest time, I just sort of forgot that we also have a toddler in this house. This does not really look like a very toddler or child friendly house. I did later on add in a high chair, so we do have that at least in the dining room. But then for toys and whatnot, we just have toys in the toddler's actual bedroom up on the second floor. So we don't really have a play area downstairs. I feel like that'd be very easy to add still though. You could just go through and sort of add some toys here in the living room. We definitely have some space. So yeah, I feel like that's definitely a possibility here. But you can see that the living room is very fancy. I put up a lot of art. We have some plants. It's very matchy-matchy. I did not put a TV in the living room for some reason. I just really felt like this house would have more of like a conversation area type of living room as opposed to a TV living room sort of thing, you know. I did put a TV in the house though. Eliza and Alexa have a TV in their bedroom, so at least they have that. But then here downstairs, I have this really fancy area here where I have the perfect spot for a grand piano. I was thinking that Alexa also is really great at playing the piano, so she can sit there and just practice, and Eliza can sit on the couch and just listen, you know, drinking her glass of wine. I could totally see her become adjusted to that type of lifestyle, you know. That's totally fine for Eliza. But then here we have that corner with the grand piano. I also placed a couple of larger bookcases. And whenever I do just base game interiors, I really have to, it takes me a second to warm up to the fact that I'm going to be repeating items quite a little bit. So I did repeat a couple of those like really fancy bookcases here. I feel like it kind of works in this very matchy-matchy living room regardless. We have like a very matchy-matchy sort of thing going on with the wallpaper, and that's the same color as the like chairs and the couches and the love seats. So everything is very much matching, and that's sort of what I was going for. I feel like that really works out when you have these really fancy houses like this. And then off of the living room here is where we have an archway leading into the dining room. And the dining room is very fancy. I could totally see these people throwing fancy dinner parties, having their friends over and whatnot. So I placed a really big dining table in here. It's an 8-seater dining table. And then we also have a full-on bar in the back here. It's like, this space is so big, you could totally fit an entire kitchen here if you wanted to, but I just placed a really fancy bar, and then we have a really fancy kitchen in the other room that's connected to the dining space. So yeah, it's a very closed off floor plan in that sense, but I always really like that, especially for these older style base game homes. So it's very closed off. You could totally renovate it and open it up a little bit more, but since it was such a big space, it's just easier for me to make rooms a little bit more cozy and comfy looking when stuff is a little bit more closed off. So that's what I decided to do here as well. But you can see that we have a full-on bar with a bar back as well. I turned it into sort of like a coffee bar area, and we also have a coffee maker in the kitchen. So there's a coffee bar in there as well. But I could totally see this be the perfect space for dinner parties, family get-togethers. I think that Alexa is the type of person that would throw dinner parties for friends at least once a month. You know, she would invite everyone over. Maybe she is very much into cooking, or she would hire someone to do all the cooking and she would just like hang out with the guests. I could totally see that be a thing as well. So yeah, she's very fancy. I think she comes from a lot of like old money as well. She is a very successful author, so she makes her own money as well. But I do think that she's very accustomed to being quite wealthy. That's just how she's always lived her life, I feel. So that's sort of the type of lifestyle that she wants to be social. She wants to invite people over to her home. She wants to have these fancy dinner parties for people to enjoy. So she's wealthy like that, but she also just enjoys that kind of thing, like hanging out with people and just being social in that sense. And then here off of the dining room, which is also connected to the hallway is where we have the kitchen, and the kitchen's really big. I really like the tiles that I used in this space. I never use these tiles and they feel very nostalgic to me. I think I used them all the time when I was little, when I played Sims 1. I think I used these tiles in kitchens all the time, but I felt like for this older house, it was absolutely perfect. So the black and white classic kind of tile. And then I used a regular wallpaper in the kitchen, which I barely ever do, but to like warm it up a little bit, I don't know, I felt like a wallpaper was nice. You don't really see it that well anyway, because we have a lot of like cabinets against the wall and whatnot. It's a very old style kitchen. A little bit outdated, if you will, but still very fancy is kind of what I was going for here. And we have a gigantic island in the middle. Like, she is huge. I did have to fill up the space somehow, and since we already had an official, I guess, dining space or dining room in this house, I felt like an extra dining table would just be a little bit much, but an island was absolutely perfect. So I placed a couple of bar stools around the island counters as well. So we have like sort of like a breakfast nook, I guess, and I didn't really place the bar stools right next to each other. I kind of scattered them around the island. I thought that was a nice lived in look and feel for the space, so that's what I did. And then I was trying to clutter up the kitchen to the best of my abilities, but we are just using base game, so I don't really have a lot of kitchen clutter to use in here. So I don't know, I'm not sure if I repeated anything, but I tried the best with the best that I could with the stuff that I had available to me, and it's not a whole lot. This is where I realized that we don't really have anything for the toddler in this house at all just yet, so I decided to place some baby wipes on the counter, and then I also put in a high chair in the dining room. Like, I just swapped out one of the chairs for a high chair, and thankfully we actually have a high chair that matched the color scheme perfectly. That's one thing about base game builds. If you want to make stuff matchy-matchy, you totally can, because we have full-on sets of everything, and like everything has at least a color swatch that sort of matches when you're using the same style items, that is. So yeah, that was kind of helpful in this house as well. And then I still had a little bit of space left here in the kitchen, so I just decided to place a little china cabinet and just some extra knickknacks. Like, obviously we had to have a bin, and then I also placed some plants. I also put in a very visible fire alarm this time. Usually I hide them behind my cabinets, but then the people that download the houses can't see it, so maybe they'll think that it's not there, and then you'd still place one yourself probably. So I actually made it really visible this time. I thought that was very helpful. And then here we are moving on to the second floor. So first of all, we have this landing, which I wasn't sure what to do with at all, because, you know, just base game, definitely running out of items to use. So I decided to just place my everyday, I want to say, landing items, which are bookcases, plants, and random chairs. And that's what I went with for this one as well. And then the first bedroom that we're decorating is actually the main bedroom for Eliza and Alexa. And I went fancy for this one. They do have a really nice walk-in wardrobe. They also have a really nice ensuite. I will say walk-in wardrobes are tough to do when you're just using base game. It's really not all that fancy looking, but it's nice that they have one, you know, so I went with it. And then I'm using the, I don't know, is it like a $12,000 bed or whatever? Maybe I'm just saying things, but this is by far the most expensive bed I think that we have, at least in the base game. She's very expensive, she's very fancy looking, and obviously I had to use that in here. I was also really trying to make Eliza's mansion dreams come true. For one of the goals for her aspiration, I feel like she has to own a house that's worth a specific amount of money. I think 300,000 if I'm not mistaken. I'm not exactly sure. It could be something like that, but we can check it when I give you a tour of the place. I also gave Eliza a makeover, by the way, because, you know, for my base game save file, I am doing makeovers for all the townies, making over their storylines as well if I want to. I did that for the BFF household as well, and I did that for the pancakes, obviously. I didn't necessarily do that for the land grabs. They just have their own, I guess, classic storyline that is just so iconic that I didn't really want to touch it. But I did change up the storyline. Well, not necessarily the storyline, but more so the household situation for Johnny Zest, which he is technically part of the land grabs, but not really. He lives with a roommate now. Or at least I think I did 2 trailer builds on one lot, and Johnny Zest lives in one, and then he has a friend that lives in the other one. And I think there is going to be some romance between those two at some point, so that's a really fun thing that I did for my save file as well. I just really like to sort of, freshen up the storylines for specific townies or, specific living situations, sort of tell that story of how time goes on, especially for the pancakes here, where I did age up their son to a teenager. And I think when you first start out, the pancakes actually are young adults themselves. When you start a fresh, just like save file that's not like altered. So yeah, I turned them into adults, and they have an older son and Eliza at least has a new daughter, like a toddler. So, I kind of like to freshen up the storylines like that and see what I can do to make it feel a little bit fresh and new. Then the next bedroom that we're doing is actually an extra bedroom, and I can totally see Iggy sometimes use this bedroom, though he does live in the same world, like he lives in Willow Creek, so his house is really not that far from this one. So I do feel like Iggy does prefer to stay with his dad, just like, the house where he actually lives. But then Eliza would sometimes probably really like ask him to please stay here and like spend time with her and her family and his sister. I feel like Eliza would really enjoy that. So sometimes I feel like Iggy is a really sweet kid, and he would just like stay over, and that's when they would use this bedroom, which is not really necessarily decorated for a teenager. It's more so just a very generic extra bedroom, but I feel like this house would definitely have that. I was trying to be a little bit more playful with colors here, so I'm using a lot of orange and some yellow as well, and then also some of that like really nice light blue color in the rug, and then that ties into the color of the dresser. So I was trying to make this one a little bit more colorful and a little bit less fancy than the main bedroom, if you will. And then over here is where we have little Rose's bedroom, and I made this one very pink and green. It's one of the color schemes that lately I've just really been obsessed with. I just really love pink and green together, and I just really felt like using that specific color scheme here in this bedroom. I think I used some other colors as well, though, to just have it like be really playful and cutesy and not too matchy-matchy, even though I feel like Eliza and Alexa would definitely go for a very aesthetically pleasing nursery, But at some point, I feel like you gotta give that up, because the kid is now a toddler. She wants to have her toys around her. She wants the things that she wants, So you can't always keep up with just the aesthetics for a nursery at some point anymore. You just gotta let the kid be a kid. And I feel like that's sort of the point that they're at right now. So it's definitely still very cutesy with the matching color scheme and the pink and the green and stuff. But then there's also just a bunch of toys that maybe are a little bit less pretty, but still I really like this living or bedroom. I love the wallpaper that I used in here. I should use this one more often. But when I'm using more packs, obviously I have so many cute wallpapers to pick from, but this one has really cute color swatches, the one with the flowers. It does somehow always remind me a little bit of SpongeBob, though. The flower pattern, I feel like SpongeBob sort of has flowers in it, like in the cartoon, that sort of look like the flowers on this wallpaper, but maybe that's just me. So this toddler's bedroom is actually pretty spacious. There's quite a bit of room for her to play, which is only fair because this is the only room in the house that actually has some toys for her. Except for the backyard, actually, I did make a sand pit there with a couple of toys for her to use as well. So, at least that's there. Then there's another small room here as well, which is going to be Alexa's office. So we have that over here. By the way, there's also a hall bathroom upstairs. I'm not sure if I actually recorded furnishing that one or if I cut that footage out, but it is there. So yeah, we have one ensuite and then one hall bath, and then there's another powder room downstairs as well. So yeah, there's 3 bathrooms total in this house. But I really wanted to make this like fancy office since Alexa is an author, she's a writer, so she would have her own office here where she just writes her books and does her work. And I wanted to give her a cute reading nook here as well. So I just put a really fancy leather, I always call them library chairs. I don't know why, but they just feel like chairs that you would find in a fancy old library. So that's what I put in there. I thought that was fitting. And then here, I guess I did record the hall bath over here. It's kind of fancy where we have a separate tub and shower because the bathrooms in this house are a little bit larger than I would usually make them, which is only fitting because the house is very large and fancy. So that's what I did. But yeah, here we have a little hall bath. Everything is very nice and white and crisp and neat and not cluttered. We do have some folded towels and some towel racks and whatnot. but then not a whole lot of clutter other than that, which I feel like is fitting for this house and the way I cluttered up this house. And then here in the backyard, I really struggle with backyards when it comes to just base game because we barely have any cute furniture that's supposed to be like for the outdoors, for the backyard. So normally what I'll do is I'll either create a little lounge area with just indoor furniture and pretend it's outdoor furniture. For this one, I didn't end up doing that because we already had a couple of loungers by the pool, so I decided to go for a large 8-seater dining table outside. Given the fact that Eliza and Alexa do enjoy hosting their dinner parties, maybe in the summertime, they like to host their dinner parties outside, so that's what I did. There's no bar or anything here, but there is a really nice large dining table and a pool for people to use, so I feel like that's kind of nice. And then at first I had placed a bunch of planter boxes and whatnot, but then I decided, you know what, the kid needs a little area to play in the backyard, so I created a little sand pit here. If you do have the Sulani pack, Island Living, then you can actually make sand castles and stuff in the sand. If not, then it's just a little play area with some toys for the kid to use, and it's still cute. And then it was time to go around the wraparound porch and see what I could do there for activities and like little furniture pieces to sort of fill it up. So here on the side, I decided to go for a gardening area, so I placed a bunch of planters. I also put in a handiness table. I'm not sure which one of these two Sims would be into handiness. Maybe no one, but you know, it's still a nice little skill building item to have, I feel like, since we did have the space. And then on the other side of the porch, I had already placed a chess table earlier, and then I placed another painting area. So we have one out back and then here on the side as well, where we have the chess table. And then out here is where I decided to place a nice outdoor seating area as well with a couch. We have the bonsai tree, and then I think I created another seating area in the back here. Yeah. Outside by the kitchen back door. So yeah, we have that. And then that's actually it for this build. So let's jump into the game and I'll show you the house in real time. So here we have the house in the game. When there's a fountain in the front yard, you know you've made it. I feel like when it comes to Sims, that's when you know a house is fancy. I've been doing that since the early Sims 1 days. So I did it for this one as well. I thought it was fun and nostalgic. But yeah, here's the house and here is the family as well. So I can quickly show you. This is Eliza. She did get a makeover. She's wearing her workout clothes right now. And actually, let me check if I made them engaged or not. No, they're just partners. They're just in a relationship, they're partners, but they're deeply connected and they're doing really well. This is Amara Alexa. I've been calling her just Alexa throughout the voiceover, but we actually gave her 2 first names. I really like her. She's so pretty. I love her outfit as well, and she's just a really fancy lady. And then over here, we have little Rose. She's just playing in her room. How cute is she in her little purple dress? I think she's so adorable. And I actually have to set up the relationships properly because she doesn't actually know Iggy just yet, which is obviously horrible. So I have to set that up in the game still. But yeah, this is the house. So we have a really fancy front yard, like I said, with a fountain. And then in the back here is where we have a really nice backyard with a fancy pool and some loungers, a dining area. I really tried to put in as many skill building items as possible. So we basically have, well, dare I say everything? Probably not everything, but we have a lot of things. On the porch, we have gardening over on this side. There's also handiness here. There is a door here off of the living room, so everything is pretty easily accessible. And then on the other side here is where we have chess, painting, the bonsai tree, and then there's more painting over here in the back off of the dining room. So there's a lot to do here around the house, literally. But then let's go inside. So over here we have the entrance, and the entrance is so fancy with a double staircase and then the open landing over here. It's just, she's really fancy. And then there's an archway going into the kitchen, but also an archway going into the living room over here, which is also very fancy. I do feel like they're very interested in art, so they have a couple of really expensive art pieces pieces around the house. There's one over here as well. I think this is one of the most expensive ones in the game. You can see here that it's Eliza's dream to purchase 20 columns, which we did do that. Pretty impressive. And then she also wants to have a home worth 350,000 simoleons. So at the moment, we have a house that's worth 209,532 simoleons. So she's not quite there yet. They may have to move at some point to, I don't know, a castle or something, but she is well on her way, so that's good for her. In the living room, we also have this grand piano set up and then a couple of bookcases, and then I kept it fairly simple. Over here is a small half bath off of the living room, and then through this archway is the dining room. So there's a full-on bar here. We have a couple of extra expensive art pieces. There's also a stereo in here for those dinner parties that they like to host. There's some coffee here, like a little coffee nook, and then obviously a table, and I also put in a high chair. Through this archway is the kitchen, which is also very fancy. This is such a nostalgic kitchen to me. It just feels very Sims in the best way, and I think it's mostly to do with the floors. Like that black and white tile is just perfect here. But the kitchen is pretty fancy. It's not too cluttered or anything, but we do have another coffee nook here. I also actually put in a dishwasher, which is not something I do every day for my houses for some reason. And then we just have like a fridge, a stove, and a really nice island here in the middle. Then going up, obviously we have that really fancy landing over here, and then the first door over on the right is Amara's office where she does all her writing and reading, I feel like, as well. Next to it is a hall bathroom with a separate shower and tub, and then nothing too crazy, but it does feel kind of fancy. Then this door over here leads you into the main bedroom with a very expensive bed, and then they do have a TV in here. This is literally the only TV in the house. So if you wanted to make the house worth more money, then I guess you could just add a bunch of TVs and that would already help you out a lot. Over here they have their walk-in wardrobe, which is not too fancy actually, because, you know, we only have a limited amount of items to use in the base game, but I feel like it gets the job done. And then over here they have their really nice spacious ensuite as well. A window by the tub would have been cool, and I tried that, but it looked really silly from the exterior because it would have to go like here, and I really didn't like the look of it, so I didn't give them a window in the bathroom, unfortunately. This is the extra bedroom that I feel like Iggy uses sometimes, but he doesn't really like to spend the night here, I don't think. But there is a fancy extra bedroom, which I really like the colors in this room. I think those are very soothing colors. And then over here is the toddler's bedroom, which is very colorful. It's mostly green and pink, but we also have some hints of purple and, you know, some touches of blue, dare I say, and it's a little bit all over the place, but it's really nice. It's a really nice room for her to grow into, I feel like. So that is it for this house. So this base game colonial is up on the gallery. It's expensive. It comes in at just under 240,000 simoleons. So there you go. For Eliza though, it's still not enough. And it's on a 40 by 30 on the Park Shore lot in Willow Creek. So if you want to place it in your game, then that's where it goes. But that's going to do it for today's video, so I really hope that you enjoyed this one. You can obviously go ahead and download this build off the gallery like I just showed you. My username on the gallery is SimmerySims. You can follow me on Instagram if you like. My username on there is SimmerySims as well. If you're not subscribed to my channel already, feel free to do so, and if you'd like to get notified every time I upload, just click that little bell icon. I also live stream over on Twitch a few times a week, so if you're interested in that, go ahead and give me a follow over on twitch.tv/SimmerySims. So I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!